Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and I'm joined, of course, by Mark, the FPL General, and we are back with another episode of General's Orders. The final international break of 2023 is coming to a close. We've had the first week of that. We've had some scandalous World Cup results with the wrong biscuit winning the World Cup, if you ask the right particular person. So it's time to put things right, isn't it, Mark, and get back to talking about some football instead of confectionery, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, thankfully, no more international breaks for a while. It's what was that, 3 international breaks in the first 12 game weeks?
Oh,
Way too
yeah.
many. But we're probably going to be moaning in a couple of weeks' time that there's way too many games and too many deadlines to keep up with. So best part of the FPL season is coming up, in my opinion. So bit of chaos for content creators like ourselves, but we'll embrace it and we'll have a nice quiet January then.
Absolutely. And I suppose whilst the international breaks have, been, probably too frequent, it does just help get a little bit of extra sort of emotional and intellectual gas in the tank so that we've got enough for the sprint that is coming up, because boy, have we got a lot of game week deadlines coming up. We're already sort of planning the Christmas rota and the Christmas schedule, and yeah, it's a crazy one this year. We've even got a game on Christmas Eve. So what are your thoughts on that period coming up? Are you excited, nervous, or probably a combination of all those emotions?
Yeah, definitely a combination. Like I said, the Christmas period is always my favorite part of the season. You can make up a lot of ground, and you can really set yourself up for a very good season if you can manage this festive period well. I'm definitely fearful as well because I'm a manager who's patient, and I actually like having lots of time to make my decisions. I think it's served me well so far this season. Maybe having 3 international breaks has helped me to make better decisions. So I'm a bit fearful of being kind of forced into making decisions every couple of days, when it usually takes me the best part of a week to actually figure out what I want to do. But hopefully the first instinct on transfers and captaincy and stuff like that will be right, and we'll be sitting pretty hopefully around Christmas time.
Yeah, that's the hope. And I suppose the other thing with that quick fire deadline kind of schedule that we've got coming up, the good side of that, if things go well, is if you have one of those game weeks not go so well for you, it does mean that very quickly you can turn it back into a green arrow if you need to. So it's a bit, we see that kind of cliche from football managers sometimes. If you watch Brian's Guns videos on X, for example, you know what I mean about those real stock football manager phrases. And one of them largely centers around the idea of, if you've got a midweek game coming up after a very disappointing Sunday match, as a normal football manager, that's actually quite often the perfect example, because yesterday's news is always old news in politics, football, etc. And so having those quick deadlines means you can turn what was perhaps a very disappointing, dare I say even embarrassing result, into a solid 1-0 win, and you're back on track a mere 2 days later. So you get that kind of opportunity as well. It can go the other way. You can have a really good game, we can then have a bad one. But in terms of having those deadlines in quite quick succession, there is the opportunity to, be able to change the narrative very quickly, which is quite useful sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And certainly we're going to talk about it today, but we've got to start preparing for these crazy game weeks. And I think the first thing is the 7 deadlines in December. So first thing you should do is stick a few reminders in your phone, or make a post-it note somewhere, because it's very easy to miss them in a busy time in life. And I think we might even have a Thursday deadline, which
We do.
surely is a first. I don't ever remember a Thursday deadline before. So yeah, people need to watch out for that one.
We may have had one perhaps in Project Restart, but that was quite
Possibly.
literally a blur in my memory. So it's very difficult for me to.
We've all erased that time, I think, in our
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah, exactly. It's all some big fever sort of dream. So yeah, as you said, we've got a Thursday deadline coming up. At Scout especially, obviously, we're starting to build, as I said, sort of rotas and schedules for that time of year. And I suppose people may find it useful to hear us talk about it, because yeah, you may have to do that with your FPL management. I've got on our big old board of when the videos are, put the deadlines in the weirdest possible places, and I'm having conversations with content creators being like, hey, do you want to do a live stream on Christmas Day? It's yeah it's all a bit crazy. So yeah, make sure you get yourself prepared. And of course, one of the best ways to do that is to use your Fantasy Football Scout membership as well. You can still save up to 20% on that. The season ticker especially is going to be super useful as you're coming up on this particular stage of the season, because it can kind of help you plan without having to think about what day of the week it is, if that makes sense. You can sort of get a feel for that part of the season. You can divide it in half. You can maybe only look at with the wildcard period of number 1 and then post wildcard period number 2. All sorts of ways you can customize it. And of course, as all of those matches happen over the Christmas period, all of that match data is going to drop instantaneously into the members area for you to have a look at, whilst everyone else around you is opening their presents, and you know that inside your presents are just a new pair of boxers and a new pair of socks. You can be having a look at some more exciting gifts, which is perhaps the expected goal involvement data of a certain Chelsea midfielder or something like that. Make sure you have a look at that. So let's move on to how you got on in game week 12, which does feel like a while ago now, of course, but obviously does set the context for game week 13. So 91 points up to 177k mark. So really on course now. I think you were looking for what, inside the top 100k for Christmas? You're definitely on course for that.
Yeah, that's always kind of a loose goal. I think I went from about 450k up to 177. So it just shows you, one good game week, you can still jump very quickly in this game. Obviously, it can go the other way as well. But it was, for the audio listeners, Johnson and goal, Cash, Gabriel, and Shimaka. So Shimaka's come in with a 15-pointer. I'll talk about him in a second. Bowen with 8, blanks for Son and Gordon. Vice captain Salah for 16. Watkins with 6, captained Haaland for 32, and Alvarez for 5. So there's a lot going on there. First of all, Shimicus. The beauty of having a terrible bench in FPL is you get lucky sometimes. And my advice to people going into Game Week 12 was, if you can bench Shimicus, I would. And that's what I would have done if I didn't have a Bayer or a Gusto on the bench. I probably would have actually even sold Shimicus possibly if I didn't have a Madison injury to deal with. So the stars just aligned, and a very sweet 15-pointer, but I am not taking any credit for that whatsoever because, like I said, I probably wouldn't have started him in most other scenarios. I thought there was a very good chance he wouldn't play. We didn't know about a Gomez injury, so it just worked out, and sometimes you do get lucky, and it's nice to be on the right side of that. If you can be on the right side of that kind of luck, a few times, more often than not throughout a season, it can really help with your rank in many leagues and stuff. So taking that one with a lot of gratitude. The captaincy on Haaland, I kind of zigged when most people zagged, or I zagged when most people zigged. I think is probably the way you say it. When everyone posted their team on social media on the weekend, I was just seeing Salah for the captaincy, and I kind of get a little bit bored of just doing what everyone else is doing. That's not why I captained Haaland. You'll remember I went into the season just captain Haaland as often as possible. I think there's only one game week when I didn't do it, and that was the Manchester United fixture when he did really well. I captained Salah that week, and Haaland outscored him. So I was obviously slightly concerned when Salah did the business, first of all, and I needed Haaland to deliver on the Sunday, but he did. They ended up scoring the same point, so it didn't really matter too much. So it was good to see the Haaland faith restored. Bowen's been great, but obviously a flag there. We need to keep an eye on that this week. And elsewhere, Alvarez keeps chipping in. Watkins got his customary goal. But we'll talk about my bus team soon. But there's, I dare I say it, there's wildcard temptation this week. People, I say it every week, but there's very strong wildcard temptation this week because Game Week 13, the fixtures are a nightmare really for most teams, and we've got this festive period coming up. My bench is really weak, so there is some temptation to maybe pull the trigger this week or next week.
So I've actually put your bus team on the screen now, and bench at the moment, Turner, Bayer, Gusto, Nakamba. And so then normally that's fine. It has been for some time, but we have been saying the time is going to come when maybe it won't be. And it does involve having to start Cash away at Spurs. It involves having to start Shimikas away at City. And as much as he's obviously come through for us against Brentford, we're probably not expecting that to happen away at the Etihad Stadium, for example. Bowen and Haaland have flags, for example. I don't think we're massively worried about those, but of course, it's still gonna, I think, worry people a little bit. So, with this bus team, do you think it can get through Game Week 13, or do you think this could be a take your medicine kind of week? That's the kind of dynamic we've discussed before.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to weigh up for the rest of the week. It's, can this team survive another week at least, or do I just rip the plaster off and patch it up ready for the busy period? So I think a lot will depend on Bowen. If Bowen's okay, that'll probably be enough for me to just hold off. I expect Haaland to be fine, and it's the first kickoff as well, so there's a good chance we'll get some Haaland information before deadline anyway. But again, looking at it, cash away to Tottenham, I don't like. Obviously, don't want to start Tsimikas really against Manchester City. Even Gordon, I'm not feeling fantastic about at home to Chelsea. It's more about the players I don't have than the players I do have. I'd like to get Saka, who I've been kind of wanting to get for a couple of weeks. Mbumo could come in, but again, that could probably wait till game week 14. We've got the gift that is Palmer. There's Darwin Núñez is very tempting. So yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky, and I'm nowhere near a decision on whether to stick with it or not. We'll see how things develop in terms of Bowen, etc. during the week. But just trying to focus on doing what's right for my team. You'll get a lot of opinions. I probably shouldn't have. I put a picture of this team up and shared some of my wildcard thoughts on Twitter, and you get all kinds of opinions. Good opinions. One way or the other. But I try not to let those comments influence me too much. But it's good to get some insight just to see what other people think. Some people think, no need to wildcard, just dead end into game week 18, the blank, and then have your wildcard afterwards for a double game week, etc. Other people think, there's 5 targets that you really want and you can't get them all with free transfer, so why not just get them all in? So, yeah, it's there's a lot going on here. Fixtures, Son, Tottenham weren't very good in the last game week. It's funny, I just brought him back in and I'm really willing to lose him. If I wildcarded, I don't know if Son would survive. So, as is often the case during an international break, I am all over the place on Tuesday/Wednesday. So, hopefully things are clear in my mind come Friday.
Yeah, that's the hope for sure. I mean, I guess the question is, what can you feasibly achieve with the free transfers you have? If someone said to you, cannot use your wildcard here, and you had to only use your free transfers to address this, what would be your priorities, do you think?
I think I've only got one free transfer, so I'm given the busy period, especially the 3 game weeks in a week that's coming up after this one, so 14, 15, 16, I would like to have 2 frees for that period. So even though the fixtures don't look good on paper at the moment, it's not ideal playing Cash and Tsimikas, but if I don't wildcard, there's actually a chance maybe I just bank and take this game week on the chin. Most people are in the same boat. Probably not going to be an extremely high scoring game week. I do have a lot of the key assets anyway that are highly owned, so the damage shouldn't be too bad when you look at those fixtures. So it's probably is a case of maybe just taking that medicine, maybe a red arrow, but then 2 frees for 14, 15, 16, and maybe a bit of a shake up then. And again, then the wildcard probably just gets held off until 18, 19 or 20. So a lot to think about this week.
I mean, from the game weeks coming up, this one is certainly the trickiest one. When we've been doing a bit of our advanced planning, and I was talking even sort of like game week 10 and 11, trying to get through this period with free transfers so I could wildcard in game week 19. 13 was always the fly in the ointment. It was always the one that was like, I am going to have to suffer this one. And I think this season, I feel like me and you are both in a good position, and we always say this in doing this video podcast this year. We've kind of stumbled upon this idea of sometimes taking your medicine, sometimes taking a game week on the chin, whatever expression you want to use. And a lot of the times when we go into a game week with that in mind, it manages our expectations in such a way that either we're pleasantly surprised. Maybe Tsimikas gets 8 or 9 points away at Man City. He might get 2 assists, and he gets subbed off, and then Liverpool can say, yeah, that could happen. We've seen ourselves get almost like lucky whenever we've sort of just decided to kind of accept our fate that this week is going to be a bad game week. Sometimes it turns around. Because, I mean, let's not forget, right? You've got Haaland, Alvarez, and Salah. They're 3 quite reliable point scorers this year. We're just scared of this fixture because they're playing each other. But there's every possibility this game is a 2-2, and all 3 of those guys get double-figure hauls. So if that happens, your game week, you're probably down for a solid 60 points. So there's every possibility that could happen too. And so, yeah, leaning into that to, as you say, maximize the weeks beyond it is probably actually a much more solid idea than it would be if there were more exciting opportunities in this game week.
Yeah, and on the flip side, the targets that I'm looking at, if I was to wildcard this week, the fixtures are not great anyway. Palmer plays Newcastle. I would probably double up on the Arsenal defence with Saliba coming in, but Mbumo would come in as well, and they play each other. So again, that's not really optimal for this game week. And there's a few others as well. Darwin's very tempting, but he does have Manchester City this week. So you can look at this a lot of different ways. Yes, maybe it doesn't look great cash away to Tottenham, but I mean, defenders this season are just a nightmare. There's not many good ones out there, and I still just keep coming back to Cash with a good underlying attacking numbers. I think he had 2 shots in the box and gave me 12. He can score in any game really, and I would still be reluctant to lose him even because of the fixtures, just because of the lack of options elsewhere. When I was building a quick wildcard draft, I think I had Gabriel, Saliba. Shimikas would probably survive just because of the lack of options elsewhere, even though he has a slight rotation risk. But yeah, it's probably not going to be a wild card the more I look at it. And just again, it's the week after an international break. I say it all the time. It can often be quite a funny game week, and odd things can happen. I think we've had some pretty nasty game weeks after the international break, so that's on the back of my mind as well. Maybe just one more week, and then the fixtures clear up for some of those players like Mbumo. The Arsenal defense wouldn't be playing against Mbumo, and then you're getting closer to fixture turns for players like Palmer and stuff as well. So yeah, and then you obviously lose if I did want to go on a differential Darwin, you get the Manchester City fixture out of the way as well. So yeah, I'll say now I'm leaning towards the wild card, but you need to just ban me from saying that word because people probably switch off at this point when I just mention the word. The sooner I play it, the better the content will be.
I mean, I disagree. I mean, if we can put wildcard in every thumbnail, the clicks we're going to get out of that. I mean, wow. So if you could just play it like at the end of the first wildcard period every season, views are going to be incredible. So, but I get what you're saying. It is annoying. The expression "burn a hole in your pocket" is almost tailor-made for those of us who still have our wildcard for sure. What we will do in a second is we will put your possible wildcard on the screen because you have sent it to me and people like looking at a wildcard, but also looking at it again, as you say, might help you realize you don't want it now. But just on Cash, before we get to that, with Cash, I've got him, obviously. I have a lot of injury issues, which we will see in a minute, and I'm going to probably have to start him out of necessity. But actually, just on the issue of him in isolation, Spurs aren't necessarily looking great right now. They've got a couple of suspensions and injuries in defence. Maddison not being there is an issue. So if Villa won this game 1-0 and Cash got an assist, great. But I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation. You might be hoping for it rather than expecting it, but if it was to happen, it wouldn't necessarily be a huge shock just because of the state that Spurs find themselves in. So, yeah, anyone who's wavering on Cash, I would suffer the Spurs fixture in the hope that it might go better than you think. This is kind of where I'm at on that as well. But yeah, let's put your wildcard team on the screen. I'll read it out for the benefit of the podcast listeners. It's Strakosha and Johnson as the goalies, Gabriel, Lascelles, Branthwaite, Saliba, Shimikas as the defenders, and Burmo, Salah, Saka, Eze and Palmer, and then Watkins, Darwin and Haaland are the strikers. So you've already kind of touched on a couple of these 50-50s, between one player and another, but yeah, anything from this crop of players you've not drawn attention to yet that you sort of, umming and ahhing over?
Yeah, well, the standout here is it would be 8 strong attackers rather than 7, and it's not something I usually do. I like put the money on the pitch and avoid benching headaches every week. But again, I just come back to the busy period. If you're ever going to have a strong 8, it probably is for December. Yes, some weeks you might have a 50-50 call on do I start X or Y, but it just in my mind as well is if you do pick up an injury or a suspension, it can save yourself a transfer if you can just bench a player for a week and you've got a strong 8th one to come in. So, the key targets there, Mbumo, Saka, Eze and Palmer. So you're probably changing 4 out of the 5 midfielders. It would be losing Bowen and Son, and that would be really, dependent on Bowen being ruled out, which we don't know yet. And chances are he probably will be fine. So, and again, given that I've just brought Son back in, I said on the last video that he's one of the best picks in the game, so it doesn't make much sense to lose him. And I'm not, it's dangerous to read into one performance. Yes, they weren't great in Gameweek 12, but it's still Son and it's still Tottenham, and I've got a lot of faith in Postecoglou's team. And I like the Aston Villa fixture for Son actually this game week as well. So I wouldn't feel great about losing him. The Darwin one is tempting because I think a lot of people will struggle to get there, especially the 3-5-2 setups. If they've got Haaland and Watkins, or maybe Haaland and a cheaper forward, I think a lot of people are probably going to go Solanke now with good fixtures and reliability for minutes. I just like him as a differential, and even if he's not starting every game, we know his underlying numbers are good. He can be explosive in any game, and given how good Watkins has been, I'd be quite reluctant to lose him as well. So it'd be a matter of just having both as a differential, Watkins and Darwin, whereas most others would probably just have one or the other. Those who want to get to Darwin would probably lose Watkins to do so. Elsewhere, again, like I said, building a wildcard defense is tricky because there's very few attractive options out there. And even double Arsenal defense, I'm not in a rush to get there. It's Brentford next, which is not great when there's Mbumo involved. Wolves and Luton is probably fine, but then it's Villa, Brighton, Liverpool, even West Ham. So there's a lot of talk about double Arsenal defence, but I'm not overly keen on it myself. So I think I'll probably just stick with Gabriel. Lascelles is in that wildcard draft, but the most recent comments are that Botman might be back soon. So I'd probably maybe switch Lascelles out for a Charlie Taylor or something like that. And just on this, if I compare the wildcard draft to my current team, scenario, let's say Jared Bowen gets ruled out. What I could do instead of wildcarding, I would love to get Eze for 3 weeks. So what I could do is go Bowen to Eze, and what that would do would free up cash for the following week to do Gordon to Mbumo. So straight away I would have two of my key wildcard targets. And then we know Palmer's fixtures don't really improve until around game week 16. So I'd have a bit of time, maybe Eze to Palmer then later. So there's a lot you can do. You can still get pretty close over a couple of weeks to the wildcard team I'm talking about here. And, if I wildcarded, Alvarez would go, Son would probably go, Cash would probably go. But all three, I think, are still absolutely fine FPL picks to keep. So, yeah. Again, I think I do this every week. I talk myself out of the wild card while we do this video. So I've already got a good goalkeeper as well. So there's another factor that goes against wild card.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, on Alvarez as well. I mean, whilst there's some trickier fixtures in the next couple of weeks, Luton away in 16 is great for City. Probably they obviously have the blank in 18. But you'd probably want him back eventually. This is another reason why wildcard 19 makes a lot of sense. Is that Man City's fixtures either side of the blank are brilliant. Like Luton away and Palace at home, and then Everton away and Sheffield United at home, and then Burnley at home. 3 of the 4 games after the blank. So, yeah, it's Man City players. I think are more of they're kind of getting a little bit forgotten about, and I think they could be the key to unlocking. Weirdly enough, despite the fact they missed Game Week 18, they could be the key to unlocking, navigating that period quite well, because the fixtures they've got are kind of irresistible. They play all 3 of the bottom 3 in 7 game weeks between 16 and 22. So we got to have a plan for them for sure. So
yeah. The other thing is, Bukayo Saka is a key target for me. But when you dive a little bit deeper, the Arsenal attacking numbers are not as good as they have been. Saka's numbers himself are not as good either. He's not a 100% nailed on penalty taker anymore either. He can give them up if he wants to. So I haven't had him for a while, and it's been fine. So I'm asking myself, do I really need to get there? And at the moment, I think the answer is probably no. But I know that can change quite quickly, because Saka is one of my favourite players to own in FPL. And, I've had a lot of good times with him. And in an ideal world, I would have him in there in my midfield. So, but yeah, again, if there's a Bowen issue, Bowen to Saka, it's not a huge jump. It could be done somehow, even if it means a -4. So there's lots of different options here.
Mm. Yeah, and the main draw for the Arsenal attackers will be Wolves at home, Luton away, 14-15. Weirdly enough, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to sell Saka because after the Luton game, it gets much harder, and they can't cover you in 18 very well because they're away at Liverpool. So, managing Arsenal right now is tricky.
It's an odd season. I listen to a lot of FPL podcasts, and it's really interesting this season. You listen to a podcast, and one of the hosts will be thinking about buying Son, and another will be thinking about selling Son, and we're kind of similar on Saka. So it's just that's a sign it's shaping up to be a very good season.
Yeah, no, I like that because it just creates a bit of differential kind of. Just difference makers between teams, which we like to see. As I said, I don't really feel like there's much of a template this year. There's several different templates that kind of really encapsulate different styles, and they all seem to be just about doing the job, and I quite like that. It's always nice to see. It's more fun than there being a template, and anyone who doesn't have the templates having a really horrible time. That's what we don't want. So, yeah. I'll move on to my team because, to be honest, if anything, Mark, I actually need your help because my team is in total disarray, courtesy of All of the Flags. Now, it's doing well. I got 92 points in game week 12. I'm up to 38k now. I also had some Shimikas luck, but it did stem from exactly the same situation as yourself. If I could have benched him, I would have done, and I was planning to. And then Estupiñán got injured again. So then I had to start him. My transfer was to get Johnston in, which the Everton game was... I was less riding on that really for Palace returns defensively because I've got Johnston and Anderson. It's really the Luton game. And then beyond that I was more interested. I just felt there was a chance. So I'm not too upset that didn't go well. And I feel happy that I've got that in place now. In terms of who else did well for me, obviously I signed Bowen as my Maddison replacement. So instant success there. However, he is now injured. My view was to captain Bowen this week. But of course, we've now got this yellow flag. And the problem is that we find my team once again in the situation of I'm just like Sheldon Cooper, I'm having fun with flags, or rather not so much fun with flags, because now it's Van de Ven, red, Estupiñán is 25%, Matoma is 50%, Bowen is 75%, Haaland is 75%, and my bench is Turner, Archer, Cash, and Tsimikas. And then, for the benefit of the podcast listeners, my starting lineup: Johnston, Van de Ven, Anderson, Estupiñán. And the reason why Estupiñán and Van de Ven are in the team was my view was Estupiñán might be fit. And Van de Ven I'm probably going to sell because I have to. So then therefore I would start him because my replacement would need to be a starter. And then Saka, Diaby, Matoma, Salah and Bowen, with Bowen as the captain and Haaland and Alvarez as the strikers. So I got one transfer and a wildcard, admittedly. And when I did a video on this last week, I didn't have a Bowen injury yet. I don't think I had a Matoma one either, so my plan was probably just to get maybe Lascelles in for Van de Ven, so I've got a Newcastle defender starting, because I've got the same problem you've mentioned. Who do I buy as a new defender right now? There's no one who really has a good Gameweek 13 fixture who I don't already have, and I don't want an Arsenal defender for this week. So whoever I sign as a defender, I have to start, and that's my biggest problem, if that makes sense.
The solution to that problem is maybe you don't buy a defender.
Maybe.
Any temptation to sell Matoma?
Potentially, yeah. So I think that so my other thought had been, I think I'm gonna have to start Cash now. He's currently on the bench, but I think as I've sort of talked about with your team, I think I'm just gonna have to start Cash and just go with that. Hope Estupiñán's fit, and then maybe have to start Tsimikas. If Matoma is injured, is definitely out of this game, I was tempted just to get Mbeumo now, because my plan for 14 had always been Matoma to Mbeumo. Because having Matoma for Forest away, I felt was good enough. It's a last chance for I mean, Matoma has actually been a disaster for me, because I actually sold Mbeumo to get Matoma, and I'm pretty sure all I've got out of Matoma in 3 games is 1 assist, whereas Mbeumo's, I think, had 2 double-digit hauls. So the plan had always been to go back to Mbeumo, and actually I quite like him to score. I can see him scoring against Arsenal, and to actually use a bit of a Mark Southerns kind of tactic. Sometimes it's really, really beneficial to have the attacker that's playing the defense that everyone else has a representative from that you don't, because it actually makes them even more of a differential, because you're actually damaging other teams by the points you're getting, rather than simply just scoring more points than them, if that makes sense. Because I'm not interested in the Arsenal defense, really, not this week anyway. So it could be Matoma to Mbeumo.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think us marks think alike. As soon as I seen your team, as soon as I seen Matoma, as soon as I seen no Arsenal defenders, I thought double down. If you're going to make the move next week anyway, bring it forward for a week, get Mbeumo in, because we know how FPL works. We're all planning to get Mbeumo game week 14, but we could all have 2 or 3 other issues we need to deal with, maybe in defence or up front, and maybe then it becomes really tricky to get Mbeumo in game week 14. Maybe it ends up being a -4. So if there's an opportunity just to bring a move forward, if we get confirmation that Matoma's going to be out, looks like he might be, then I think it's an easy move. I would just go Matoma and Mbeumo. Don't overthink it. Yes, the defence is looking a little bit dodgy, but like we said, there's no good defenders out there anyway. So we're all just hoping to pick up a few appearance points and get our points from our 7 attacking players. So not ideal. Like myself, might have to play Tsimikas, play Cash, but I don't think it's a huge issue this week when you look at the fixtures. Where are the clean sheets coming from when you look at that list of 10 games? So I think anyone who has Matoma this week, and if you're planning to get Mbeumo anyway, I think it's just a no-brainer. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that actually puts me off making loads of changes here, I mean, so much of this is going to rely on that Bowen injury. I really do hope that is cleared up quite nicely, because if it is, easy captain for me. But if I do get some injuries that mean that I'm struggling to start the current 7 I have in attack, actually Cameron Archer is not a bad shout this week to sub in, because at home against Bournemouth, really good fixture. He has got me 9 points, I think maybe 2 game weeks ago, and he's just stayed on the bench, of course. I don't think anyone has really got anything out of Cameron Archer really yet, other than just little reminders that he might pop up every now and then. This could be a week where I rely on him and he comes through. So we'll have to see. But yeah, whilst my bench doesn't look too strong in terms of what defenders I have, I don't actually feel all that disadvantaged by possibly having to play Cameron Archer, because he's probably going to be a differential this week, even though he's in a stupid number of teams, because most people don't really like starting him. But this could be a week where he could be worth it, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually didn't spot Archer as your first sub there. It's a nice one to have. I don't think it's an odd one. I didn't think I'd ever say I'd be fearful of a 4.5 million Cameron Archer, but given that it's a good chance he could be used in a lot of 11s this week, or he could come off the bench with a good fixture, absolutely fine. Do we know if he has penalties? He probably does, doesn't he?
I think
did Norwood take one?
Norwood, I think, took the last one, but I think the reason it's been up in the air was because I think McBurney was taking them and then lost them, I think. I'm not 100% on that, but certainly there has been that there. And the other thing is that at Bramall Lane, that is invariably where he's going to get his returns. I'm fairly confident that absolutely all of his attacking returns have come at home this year. They're quite poor away, but the Steel City support occasionally helps them do quite well. I mean, obviously they nearly got a point against Man City at home, so a home game against Bournemouth. I mean, I'd actually be quite surprised if Archer doesn't get something this week. If I'm honest, because it should come through him. They don't have too many other exciting attacking assets. So yeah, I'm hoping that Bowen is fine, because the thing is, if Matoma's not, and Mbeumo seems like I'd rather start Mbeumo than Archer for sure. I'd rather not have to rely on Archer though, even though it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I have to, because I really, really, really want to captain Jared Bowen. I just really want to do it. I honestly still think he's the best captaincy shout for this game. We haven't really had a chance to talk about this yet, because obviously we didn't speak last week. I mean, you've seen it out there quite a lot. I mean, if he's fit, where do you stand on it?
I think the niggle is just enough to put me off. I don't think I was going to go there anyway for the captaincy. I'm very loyal to the big hitters, Salah and Haaland. I think 11 out of 12 weeks I've captained Haaland, and it was Salah in the other one. And even though they play each other, I just have this thing in my mind that, Haaland's just ridiculously good. He is a robot. He is a freak of nature, a freak when it comes to scoring goals and getting big chances and putting them away. So I think I'm just going to stay there. And I know he's had a niggle as well, so maybe I'm contradicting myself here. Both players are currently flagged, but I'm more confident that Haaland will be okay. And the fact that it's the early kickoff, we'll probably find out whether he's starting or not, which is helpful for the armband. On Jared Bowen, maybe I do need to kind of reevaluate how I think about him. I think that's just an FPL manager thing, where because he's significantly cheaper than the others, you kind of automatically put him down the captaincy pecking order. But again, I said it a couple of weeks ago, if I'm a fixtures-based manager, I should be giving Jared Bowen a lot more thought for the captaincy, because Burnley is an excellent fixture. And we know Bowen scored, I think, in every away game so far this season.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but yeah, the fact that he did leave the England camp, and Moyes usually doesn't give much away. He'll just say on Friday, we've come back, there's a few bumps and bruises from the international break. We'll see how they are, blah, blah, blah. So we probably won't get clarity on his fitness. And that would scare me, because if there obviously is something. And if there is something, and if there's a busy period coming up, does Moyes just be careful with him? Especially when it is a fixture that they should be okay in anyway. So, it's dependent on information, and it's probably information that we might not get. So that's why I'm leaning towards, probably Haaland number 1 as a captain, Salah possibly number 2, but Heung-min Son is certainly in the running as well.
It is annoyingly very much based on if he's fit, that's for sure. Because if this injury hadn't happened, I wouldn't be wavering at all. Because Burnley at home as well, they're actually, in my opinion, they are more favourable opponents if you can play them at Turf Moor than if you are hosting them. Because they're even more predisposed to try and play football, which invariably will lead to them probably conceding 4 or 5 goals, which is what we've seen. So, yeah, we really just need to find out more on that. So we'll have to wait and see. So we, of course, as ever, have some orders, though. That's enough about our teams. Let's see if we can help you guys with yours. So we'll move off to our first order of the day, and it very much is all about preparing for the festive period, as we've already discussed. We've got Mikel Arteta on the screen, having a bit of a training exercise with his coaching staff, getting everybody ready for the absolute gauntlet that people have to run every year, and that's FPL in December.
Yeah, I always think of new FPL managers at this time of the year. If you've never played FPL before, if you're watching this video or listening to it and you've never played FPL before, just be prepared for absolute carnage and chaos over the next few weeks. If you think FPL's been straightforward to play so far, rip up that sheet and get ready for absolute chaos. So the order number one this week is start preparing for the December madness. So there's quite a few different ways you can do that. I mentioned one earlier. First of all, make sure you know when those deadlines are. Make note of them. Maybe some reminders in your phone, especially if you're in different time zones and stuff like that. The deadlines will vary to what they've been so far. Preparation then when it comes to your squad, my team is a good example. David's as well. Our benches are looking a bit shaky. We've got a lot of flags and stuff like that. So you really need to, more so than ever, focus on the weakest links. If you've got players like Bayer and Gusto in the Canva like I do, it's time for me to start improving that area of the squad. And it's really tricky to do, and that's why the wildcard's tempting, because there's always transfers you want to make in your starting 11. But this week, for example, if Bowen's fine, if Haaland's fine, I probably should be looking at getting a better 12th player that I can lean on, especially for this this busy period ahead. So yeah, it's all about preparation at this point of the season. Use the scout fixture ticker, map out, which teams have good fixtures, which teams have bad fixtures. There's actually been a lot of good articles on the site this week about, fixtures, who to target, who to avoid, etc. So have a look at those. Just know what's happening. And, we keep in mind we've got the blank in 18 as well, then a possible double around 2021. So there's a lot going on, and very importantly too, it's good. We're getting closer to it. So African Cup of Nations, Asia Cup, that's all kicking off, I think, in January. So you've got to keep in mind that we're going to lose players like Son and Salah, Mbumo, a lot of big players. So keep that in mind as well, just as a longer term view. Preparation's key. Use the rest of this international break to especially look at the fixtures, know what's happening. And those deadlines. So and don't ignore the weak areas of your squad, because you're going to need more than 11 players over the next couple of weeks.
I'm actually going to tack something onto this order that I've only just realised in the last couple of days by doing what you've encouraged people to do there in terms of, as I said, building the kind of the editorial or the video schedule around that, I should say, is that not only do you need to know when those deadlines are, you need to know what you're normally going to be doing around those deadlines. Because I've been saying for ages I'm going to wildcard in Gameweek 19. Yeah, 19. Look at the season ticker in isolation. That looks great. I've just double-checked when Gameweek 19 is. It's Boxing Day. So it would mean that... And the thing is, the previous Gameweek 18 finishes on Christmas Eve. So it means that the previous game week, because that's the Wolves-Chelsea game that everybody has strong opinions on, it would mean basically building my wildcard squad on the evening of Christmas Eve, spending a lot of Christmas Day tinkering with it, and then waking up on the morning of Boxing Day to lock it all in, when everyone else around me probably just wants to do Christmas, let's be honest, right? And I'm like, oh, is that really the best thing for me? Fixtures-wise, yes. In a world where I don't celebrate Christmas, that's fine. So, I mean, maybe this year I just don't celebrate Christmas. I don't know. But that's unavoidable for most people. So working out where those things fit in with things, because then we get New Year, we sometimes have the same thing. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, do you remember a tweet going out from someone who's particularly well known for team news stuff about Salah maybe being injured for 2 or 3 weeks at something like 23:45 on New Year's Eve, And so then loads of people are like at a party, merrier than usual, selling Salah.
Missed the bells.
Oh, so it's not just about knowing when they are. It's knowing about what societal norms and what is expected of you from your kids, your wife, your parents, your everyone who's in your family at some of these moments, because you're going to have less time to deal with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about wildcards as well. It's one of those things where I always say wildcards need time. You need a couple of days or to prepare for them. So if you do end up wildcarding around Game Week 19, then you probably need to prepare in advance of that, a couple of days before. Have a couple of wildcard drafts built so that you don't need to, ignore your family around Christmas time and disappear into the bathroom for 2 hours to build a wildcard squad and, saying you're not feeling well. So, yeah, again, I talked myself out of the wildcard earlier, but when you throw in that whole Christmas factor and, being busy with real life, that's another reason why I kind of like to play it maybe sooner, and then I don't need the stress of a wild card over Boxing Day and Christmas.
Yeah, it's making me waver as well. So we'll see how it resolves itself. And to be fair, I might end up with loads of flags this week and need to sort things anyway. Let's move on to the second order, which again kind of comes down to planning. And this is less about specific captains, but it's more about making sure that we plan who we expect to be our captains in the next couple of weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, order number two, it's kind of linked to preparation in order number one. It's make a captaincy matrix and update it often. So this is something I haven't done myself yet. I'm going to plan to do it this week or next week for the December period. It's basically, pick out who you think are the best captaincy candidates in every game week, maybe 3 or 4 options. You're going to have Salah, Haaland, Son, and a couple of others. Maybe a Bowen would be in there this week, for example, and just highlight who you're going to captain and when. And what that always does is you might find that you're going to captain Haaland in maybe 3 of 6 game weeks or something like that. Or if you have a Heung-min Son, you might think I'm only going to captain him once in the next 7. You can throw Saka in there, and it can help you decide basically which players you want to own first of all, and then it just gives you a clearer picture of who you're going to captain in what fixtures, so that you're not kind of running around on a Friday night thinking, right, do I captain X, Y, or Z? You've already kind of pre-planned it, unless there's drastic changes in team form or player form or injuries or whatever, or the underlying numbers drop off big time for teams or players. Then you kind of take the decision away because you've already planned for it. So it's very useful. It's something I used to always do until Erling Haaland joined the league, and there hasn't been as much need for it. But Haaland does have some trickier fixtures on the horizon, and other managers might be more inclined than me to move away from him for the armband. So a captaincy matrix is very, very handy, and it's very, open an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or a pen and paper. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't take much time, but it will give you clarity on captaincy, which is arguably the most important part of the game. So don't just blindly captain Haaland. Look at his fixtures, look at the other players' fixtures, and see how you feel about captaincy for December.
I've said it before a few times on the show, but I love that we're back to a stage where we can do all of the things we used to do. We even had a captaincy video last week on Fantasy Football Scout. I mean, wow. We actually had one of those for the first time in a long time, and it feels like something that was lost and has now been found. It's exciting. And Man City having a tricky-ish run of fixtures, and when I say tricky, I don't mean a run of fixtures where you would just blindly not captain him. I mean we've got some harder games like Liverpool and Spurs and Villa, but then we've got some great games like Luton, Palace, then a blank of course, but then Everton, Sheffield United, but then Newcastle, but then Burnley. So you can flick between him and other people quite a lot. And yeah, there's some good teams to do it. So a captaincy matrix is going to be really helpful for people. So definitely do that. And you mentioned there, obviously, also about it saving you time. This order could also help you on Christmas Day. Rather than going and spending 2 hours in the toilet designing your captaincy matrix on Boxing Day, do it now. So that on Boxing Day, it takes you 2 minutes rather than 2 hours, I would say.
Good tip. Yeah, exactly. Do as much planning before that Boxing Day, Christmas Day period as you can. Like I said, especially wildcarders, if you are thinking you're going to wildcard 19 or 20, have it prepared a couple of days beforehand. Maybe 2 or 3 drafts. I'll go with this draft if this happens on Boxing Day or and stuff like that. So yeah, be prepared in advance.
Absolutely. Well, our final order is a nice simple one, to be honest, and would probably help people with that advanced planning, and concerns one Chelsea youngster who is taking the world by storm.
Yeah, I think it was Josh on the Always Cheating podcast a couple of years ago termed the phrase, I think it was, if FPL throws you a bone, you just take it. You don't overthink it. You grab the bone. Dogs don't overthink it when you throw them a bone. They just go and chase it and bring it back to you. So in this case, it's about Cole Palmer at Chelsea. We have an absolute gift. So Palmer is the bone here. Regardless of fixtures, he's extremely cheap. He's on penalties. He's such a good player. Chelsea are starting to tick along a lot better than they did in the early part of the season as well. Pochettino starting to get a tune out of them. That Manchester City game was nuts. So yeah, the order number 3 is here. If the first opportunity that you get, I think you just get Palmer. And there could be an argument maybe for Mitoma owners this week. We said just get Mbeumo, but you could also get Palmer. I don't mind that. But given the fixtures play for the 3 game weeks after this, I think Mbeumo's fixtures are better. But I'm certainly looking to get Palmer at the first opportunity. And when, if I wildcarded this week, he would be straight in just as a gift. Even if I didn't start him every week, Palmer's quite a nice player to have as your first sub if you do have a strong front 8. So in my team, I'm looking at Gordon, who I don't feel fantastic about because Newcastle have a lot of issues. They had a poor result in game week 12, and they've got a very busy schedule as well with all the cup competitions, Europe, and I think it's Carabao as well. So Gordon, if I could have Palmer in the Gordon spot, if I could do that for free right now, which I can, but I mean, without using a transfer, I would do it. Flip Gordon to Palmer. I would feel a lot better about that position in my team. So yeah, sometimes we get gifts. We've had Lundstroms in the past, and to me, I think Palmer feels like an absolute gift. His price is just going to keep rising, so I think he's about 5.2 now. So if you can get him 5.2, 5.3, just do it, because if he stays in that Chelsea team and if he keeps getting penalties, he could end up at about 5.96 million by the end of the season. So still cheap, of course, but yeah, just looks an absolute gem, and obviously owning him enables a lot of other things in your squad as well. So yeah, not enjoying not having him at the moment, and looking forward to owning him in the near future.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of when, not if, isn't it, with Cole Palmer, because he just looks so good. I don't have him at the moment, and that is purely team dependent. If I wildcarded right now, easy inclusion. I think we've looked at him twice in terms of just individual specific videos. I did one about 6 weeks ago when he first came into the team and had played 2 games, and from those 2 games, his like per 90 stats compared to basically everyone else in the Chelsea team was pretty good. But the conclusion was we need more data. Did one last week. We now have more data, and yeah, the numbers on this guy are just incredible. If you want more information on that, like broken down in a bit more, then go and watch that video or listen to that podcast. But the long short of it is that he looks fixture proof, because when you look at the games he's played in, he's had 1 blank since game week 7, and that was the home game against Brentford. But Chelsea actually created a lot of chances in that game. He was quite unfortunate not to get something. His expected goal involvement for that match was 1. So that's still actually pretty high. And he's getting points against everyone. So you look at the fixtures he's had, they've been tough, but he's still returned. Arsenal, he got 6 points. Spurs, he got 12. And Man City, he got 6 again. So then, if you then turn around and go, oh, well, maybe he's really good against only the good teams, because we've seen Son be like that before, we've seen Mbeumo be like that before. Well, he got 12 points against Burnley and 5 points against Fulham. So he can just get returns against anyone. You then get people come along and say he's reliant only on the penalties. Well, okay, great. Well, he's got penalties, and he's playing in a team that wins lots of penalties because he has lots of like tricky, technically gifted players around him, Raheem Sterling being the best one. So that I think the team will keep winning the penalties. But the other thing is that even when you take the penalties out of his numbers, he's still really, really good, because his non-penalty expected goal involvement amongst all Chelsea players is the second highest. I think it's just Jackson who's higher than him. And that's purely because those goals that Jackson scored against Spurs were basically tap-ins with like no goalie. That's the only thing that kind of skews Palmer out of the top slot for non-penalty expecting goal involvement. So even removing the penalties, you basically can't argue that he's pretty much the best player at Chelsea, because then you throw the price in as well. So he's benchable in the difficult games. It's just, there's nothing to dislike about Palmer at all. I can't think of a single thing at all, if I'm honest.
Yeah, same boat, like I said. Again, especially for this December period, even if you don't like the fixtures, stick him on your bench for sub, and you're going to need your first sub at certain points over the next few weeks. And it's pretty nice to have a penalty taker coming off your bench at 5.2 rather than a 4.5 defender who probably won't keep a clean sheet, or a marvelous Nakamba. Certainly rather a Palmer than a marvelous Nakamba on my bench at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, he's very good. As you say, when FPL gives you a bone, you take it. I just hope that this week FPL also gives us a Bowen. That would be also very useful, and we will just have to wait and see. It's a wait and see. Before we go, of course, another reminder to sign up for your membership as well. We've talked about some numbers there. If you find the data on Palmer useful, or you would like to have a look at it a bit more to satisfy yourself, do sign up for that membership, 20% off as well. We've also got some Black Friday deals coming up as well, so keep an eye on social media for updates on that. Yeah, it's that time of year where we can start getting some cool deals, so do pay attention to that. If you've liked the video as well, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification. It's a great way to support us, absolutely free, and it's going to help you guys out with your preparation for Game Week 13. That's all the housekeeping I need to deal with. Mark, is there anything you'd like to issue to the troops before we bid them on their way?
Oh, just I wish them good luck for Game Week 13. There will be a new 59th minute podcast, I think Wednesday, possibly Thursday. Hoping to get one out on Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that as well to help you prepare for the game week.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, an excellent podcast. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people, by the way, tweeting you in relation to that Football Manager thing I saw this week about that guy who deliberately subs his players off in the 59th minute in honor of yourself. So that must have been quite a nice thing to see, perhaps from your holiday this week.
One of my favorite tweets that I've seen recently, but no one actually asked me in the comments, was that me who tweeted that? So you never know. Maybe that was me. Maybe it's me who does that.
I hadn't thought
Just
of
that.
that. Well, there we go. Well, we can leave you on a mystery.
My days, unfortunately, my days of playing Football Manager are long behind me. If I didn't play FPL and do FPL content, maybe I'd have time for Football Manager. But it's been a long time since I played that game, so safe to say it wasn't me.
That's what he would say if he wanted us to not know it was him. So we shall leave you with that mystery ahead of Game Week 13. And yeah, green arrows hopefully for all of you guys, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.